Well, the Hayes Auditorium was built on property bought by the taxpayers from the Hayes Investment Company. And of course they had a clause in there that it had to be named the Hayes Auditorium, but that they did not contribute at all to this structure. And it was a gymnasium and an auditorium, and anybody who's ever tried to wed those two knows that there's not very easily done. There's a flat surface there for ball players, and there's not any elevation for the stage. People coming in to look at a play or whatever. But anyway, in 1944 it was only auditorium here, and maybe in 1945 I felt like I didn't want to bring my children up in a town that didn't have a library, didn't have any recreational facilities, didn't have any of those community things. And I organized the Bunkie Community Club of Women, and we managed to get the vote on the state library system, get our parish on that. Anyway, one of the things we did was to hold concerts and have concerts here in this Hayes Auditorium. And one point I had invited Southern University Choir to come. We had people now in attendance of about, I think we had 500 members of who bought tickets to come to these things. So we had a nice audience. And the choir I had heard when I was at LSU, and Paul's aunt and uncle had taken us out to hear the Southern Choir, and they were just fabulous. So I had invited them to come and sing for us in Bunkie. And the night, on the Sunday before we were to have the presentation of the choir, which they accepted my invitation, paid their own expenses, and came in 2 busloads. There was a great furor over it. And one of the planners, whose name was Brunson, called me and said, "Mrs. Eakin, I understand you're from the north, and you have invited Southern University Negroes to come to Bunkie to put on a performance." He said, "Are you letting them all in the front door of the Hayes Auditorium?" I said, "Well, they're going to sit in the balcony. That's the legal separation, the only choice there is." And I said, "I'm not from the north. I'm Sam Lyles' daughter from Lloyd Bridge." Well, his family and mine I knew had been friendly. His sister Vera had visited for all summer nearly at my grandmother's house, so he knew who I was. And then someone else called, and I gained an enormous respect for the man who owned the bar downtown, the most popular one. His name was Biles. And Mr. Biles called me that Sunday evening, and he said, "Ms. Eakin, these men are going crazy in here." He said, "I told them you weren't inviting everybody to sit together in the..." I said, "The black people will sit in the balcony, and the whites will sit on the floor." Well, actually, Frank, the best seats were in the balcony. Anyway, the choir came, but some of my cousins, one cousin, E.L. Lyles, great big old guy, was sitting there with a gun on his lap, and others had pistols and whatnot, just in case there was an uprising. Well, instead, there was a marvelous program. These were highly trained voices, and the black people in the balcony sang along with them. It was one of the most wonderful events that Bunkie's ever had, and that wasn't just my judgment. That was what other people said as well. It's the prettiest thing, a very memorable performance. But that's the way it went in those early days when we had the old Jim Crow laws and people who didn't change.